All right, we are live, ladies and gentlemen. This past week, we witnessed an engineering breakthrough from Elon Musk's SpaceX. The successful launch and recapture of SpaceX's Starship booster marks a pivotal moment in the future of space travel, showcasing advancements in reusability and cost efficiency. SpaceX is paving the way for a new era when it comes to space access in terms of the affordability and all of that good stuff. But remember, Elon Musk is frowned upon by the political elite. So instead of commemorating this occasion and encouraging more innovation, government bureaucrats have instead chosen to stifle Musk by denying his request for additional rocket launches. Also, another week closer to the election, and it appears the Kamala Harris campaign is getting increasingly desperate. We're going to be talking about all this and more on episode 469 of the In the Tank podcast.
I can imagine what can be and be unburdened by what has been. You know?
Welcome to the In the Tank podcast. As always, I'm your host, Donald Kendal. And joining me today, I've got Jim Lakely, VP of the Heartland Institute. How are you doing today, good sir?
I'm doing pretty well, Donnie. I learned this morning that the mastermind of the October 7th attack on Israel has been, let's just say, disassembled into probably about 4,000 other little pieces. So, let's not just say that they're all bad news on the front today. That's pretty good news in my book.
Yeah, not too bad. Also joining us, we've got Chris Talgo, editorial director here at the Heartland Institute. How are you doing today, good sir?
I'm cold, Donnie. Your office is very cold. That's why I have to have my jacket on.
Gotcha.
I miss summer. I miss summer already.
Yeah, we missed you.
Yeah.
Was it last week you were gone golfing? How did that go?
That went pretty well. I had a good season overall. This weekend looks like it's going to be decent. So it looks like this will be the big farewell weekend. And then we get, 6 months of just not fun weather. But
enjoy it, Chris.
What doesn't kill us makes us stronger. That's what I always say.
That's what I always say, usually when I'm singing the Roseanne intro song. But anyways, listeners, audio-only listeners that are probably catching the show on a Friday or later, leave a review for us on iTunes. That'd be greatly appreciated. And also consider joining us a day earlier on Thursdays at noon Central Time, where we are live streaming this on Facebook and YouTube and Rumble and X. And you can join the conversation, throw your comments in the chat, throw your questions in the chat. Maybe we'll show your comments on the screen. Maybe we'll address your questions on the fly. You could also support the show by not using super chat functionality because we have been demonetized by YouTube, but you can still go to heartland.org/inthetank and donate to the show that way. That way, YouTube doesn't take a 30% cut, goes directly to the show. You can also help out the show, not by spending $1, but just spending a couple of seconds, hitting that like button, sharing this content, subscribing if you haven't already, or just leaving a comment under the video. All of those things help break through those big tech algorithms that prevent content like this from being shown to more people. But ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot to talk about as the sidebar shows there. Let's start off with Elon Musk, SpaceX. This I don't know if we could really overstate what happened. So on Sunday, October 13th, SpaceX made history. On their fifth test flight, SpaceX successfully launched their Starship mega rocket, a 400-foot, two-stage, fully reusable, super heavy lift launch vehicle. But most notably, the booster rocket safely navigated itself back towards Earth and was caught by its own launch tower. We have video of this. So, Jim, I think we have a couple of videos of this. So I don't know which one you want to show first, but
why don't we start off with you had me pick the you want to start with the video where 13 years ago he predicted that this is what he wanted to do. Yeah,
let's do that.
So this is Elon Musk at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., almost exactly 13 years to the day of one of the greatest engineering feats of our lifetimes. So when Elon Musk speaks and he is determined to do something, you should bet on him doing it.
So the pivotal breakthrough that's necessary, that some company has to come up with to make life multiplanetary, is a fully and rapidly reusable orbit-class rocket. This is a very difficult thing to do because we live on a planet where that is just barely possible. If gravity were a little lower, it would be easy. If it was a little higher, it would be impossible. Just a very tough engineering problem. I wasn't sure it could be solved for a while. But then I think just so relatively recently, probably just in the last 12 months or so, I've come to the conclusion that it can be solved. And I think SpaceX is going to try to do it. Now, we could fail. I'm not saying we're certain of success here, but we're going to try to do it. And we have a design that, on paper, doing the calculations, doing the simulations, it does work. And now we need to make sure that those simulations and reality agree, because generally when they don't, reality wins.
Right. So yeah, that's him in 2011 talking about this idea, and we'll get to some of his like kind of future ambitious plans when it comes to this technology and SpaceX in general. But so that was 13 years ago. Since then, there has been some test rockets and boosters that they've landed on different platforms, but this was the first time that the large booster of this Starship mega rocket was safely returned to Earth and caught by its like launch podium thing. So when I first saw this video, go ahead and play one of these. I thought it was like a fake, like a computer generated, like what it would look like or something. But this is actual video of the launch here.
I mean, look at that. That's just beautiful. I mean, just look at that.
We have liftoff.
That is the most powerful rocket ever built and the heaviest and the largest vehicle ever put into the sky.
Right. Yeah, 400 feet tall.
Yeah, it's about.
And now here is the booster rocket that detached from the ship, and it is lowering itself back down to Earth. Again, this is real. This isn't some computer generation. And now that is falling right back into its launch pad and being caught by these two humongous arms on the launch pad, catching it perfectly.
Call them chopsticks. Unbelievable. It is simply hard to comprehend what an engineering achievement that is. It really is. I mean,
right, and then the audio that's playing, you could hear all of the different people in the crowd, and then the launch room and all of that. The people at SpaceX that are cheering. It seems like it's like audio from like a World Cup game or some Super Bowl game or something like that. Like, nope, that is people celebrating decades of hard work and accomplishment all coming to fruition at the same time. So, Jim, I want to go to you first. When you saw this video, what are your initial thoughts?
I actually got emotional. I didn't think I would, but I'd never seen anything like that before. And we're going to show some sound off B-roll of here's the rocket booster coming back into the hands. Come to mama. There you go. Nice little gentle hug. And down it goes. I mean, I got emotional, and I you know, not that I almost cried, but I got choked up. This is the greatest engineering achievement in our lifetime, without any doubt. And you think about, there's a lot of people probably listening to this podcast who are kind of fans of the space program. As a kid, I was not born. I was a year from being born when we first walked on the moon. But, I watched the space program, but really I was a kid of the shuttle program, and that was always very exciting. And I followed that very closely. But it's been, frankly, since the breakup of Space Shuttle Columbia, what was that, 2004? America really hasn't had a space program of any excitement, for sure. And it's really barely been holding on. when run by NASA and the government. And as we showed that clip from Elon Musk speaking 13 years ago, I'm sure everybody in that room thought that he was crazy, that this is, you can't do that. And it's, Elon Musk is maybe the greatest immigrant to the United States since Lafayette, because he did it. And, we're showing some B-roll here. This is from a guy's phone, filming from across the border in Mexico, watching this thing come down, to give you an idea of the speed at which it was coming down. It was coming down at 2 times the speed of sound. And then through the engineering and the programming of the engines on that booster, to be able to bring it down the first try perfectly, just like that. It's incomprehensible. And when you look at it, if you're a fan of like sci-fi shows, like The Expanse is a show I recommend, actually. They go up and down from Earth and the moon and stuff on these rocket ships that look very much like Starship by SpaceX. And when you see that, you think that's some sort of computer generated animation, but it's not. That really happened. And this happened in the private sector. This happened at very large expense by Elon Musk. And we are looking at the accomplishments of a man that is historic. This is up there with Tesla, with Edison. This is a marvel of the modern age. And none of this would have been possible if we were depending on NASA to do this. And as a matter of fact, NASA has 2 astronauts stranded on the International Space Station. And who's going to rescue them? Elon Musk is. That's who. What he's been able to achieve, in engineering and through SpaceX. Thank God, he is an American, and so the United States right now is so far more advanced than the whole rest of the world in space exploration that they're not even close. I think you and I, Donnie, were talking about this yesterday. What was it? I think Blue Origin, is that the name of you can hardly remember it, right? Jeff Bezos has his Blue Origin space program. He's so far behind. It's not even funny. He should probably and a lot of people that might want to compete with Elon Musk are probably going to give up when they see something like this. There's no way anybody else in the world could do that. Nobody. It's just amazing. And I'm as excited as those young engineers who had the day of their life. They cannot believe it. The amount of intellectual might that made this happen is as good, if not better, than anything we did during the Apollo program to get people to the moon and back.
Chris, initial thoughts on this? I when I saw the clip on Sunday, I was taken back, and I immediately thought, like, we got to talk about this on the podcast. What were your thoughts?
Pretty stunning that he was able to pull this off the first time too. I mean, that is, just amazing. Not much else, I can add to this one. I think Jim, really.
Okay, well, that's fine.
Did it justice, actually.
Well, we have plenty more to talk about this. So Elon Musk has ambitious plans for this technology and SpaceX in general. They are envisioning launching Starship missions into orbit where they can build out their huge Starlink satellite and mega constellation. To put up thousands of satellites quickly, or a bigger telescope, you need big rockets. This is something that could achieve that. There are talks of using Starship to be used to launch huge telescopes into space. I think the Hubble telescope is the size of like a bus. So this could theoretically allow for even bigger telescopes that could even look further into space or what have you. They can use this to refuel other starships that are in orbit. So theoretically, you could have one of these launch the actual ship into orbit and then have another one that serves as like a refuel pod or something to go up into orbit, meet it, refuel the Starship, and then have that go off further into space. So it could more easily and efficiently and cost effectively carry people and cargo to places like the moon or even Mars. NASA wants to use Starship as part of its Artemis program, which aims to establish a long-term human presence on the moon. You could conceivably have 5 or 6 people in the cabin, says Elon Musk, if you really wanted to crowd people in. But I think most we would expect to see is 2 or 3 people per cabin. Again, this is according to Musk. And so nominally about 100 people per flight to Mars. So he's got his sights set on Mars. SpaceX actually has plans of sending 5 uncrewed Starships to Mars in 2 years. And the reasons for the 2 years thing is because like basically to get to Mars, you have to wait for like the planets to align, so that they're actually closer. The shortest distance between the two planets, and then you can launch something. So the next time that'll be the case is in 2 years. So they want to send some uncrewed test space flights to Mars 2 years from now. Beyond that, the plan would be to gear up for manned missions to the red planet 2 years after that. So if everything goes to plan, we could theoretically be sending people to Mars by 2028 using this technology. And Musk's long-term goal, and he's made this very clear, I think he's like branded the idea of colonize Mars. You see him wearing t-shirts like that. Or no,
Occupy Mars. That's what he says.
Occupy Mars, that's right. And he says that he wants to do that to ensure the long-term survival of the human species by becoming multiplanetary. So obviously all of this seems very ambitious, and I would put money on some of these things being delayed in terms of their timelines, various setbacks. But it's this sort of ambitious thinking that inspires people. And I think that this is it's been a while since like your average kid dreamed of being an astronaut. When they grow up, now they want to be like TikTok influencers or something. But it's like these sorts of plans and this sort of big ideas that lets like imaginations grow. And it also serves as a reason, at least for me, to feel optimistic. I've talked on the show a lot about how like pop culture and media is generally pretty bleak. And they're always painting a picture of some dystopian future like Hunger Games or Ready Player One or Wall-E or, you name it. Like it's always usually painting the future as some horrible, climate change destroyed planet that we're all suffering to get food. I mean, and it's all undergirded by like climate change narrative that we're destroying the planet and humanity is suffering, et cetera, et cetera. So ambitious plans like Starship and colonizing Mars, like that inspires hope for the future. It makes it seem like human potential is limitless and it's only constrained by a lack of will and some short-sightedness. So, Chris, I'll go back to you. I mean, perhaps I'm being a little flowery with my thoughts on this, but I don't know. What do you think?
To be totally honest, I mean, you guys probably aren't going to want to hear this, but I'll just say it anyways because I really don't care, actually. I mean, yeah, this is impressive, but we've got a lot more going on here that on Earth that I think are much larger problems, and I kind of actually wish we would focus more on that. To be just brutally honest about it. Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll get to the Kamala Harris stuff soon, but
No. I don't mean it like that. No, what I'm saying is, it's like we have all these problems here on Earth, whether it's wars in the Middle East and just like all these problems. I understand that it's awesome that Elon Musk and these explorers and pioneers want to go out and do that. I get that. I totally understand that. I mean, it's just like in the 1400s when people from Europe said we want to go explore this ocean, this this vast like unknown territory. I understand that. I get that. I'm fascinated by space. However, there is a part of me, maybe it's from watching sci-fi stuff where it's just things always seem to go really bad, eventually. And I don't know. I mean, this is just off the cuff. This is, this is my just like initial reaction to this. I look at that and there's a part of me that's like, wow, that is just amazing. But then there's a other side of me that says, wow, I mean, is that like going to lead to stuff that is going to be really bad in the future? And I don't know if it's going to lead to some sort of interplanetary war over who gets the mining rights in the asteroid belt or whatever, or just all that kind of stuff. But it's like, wow, I mean, it's just I don't know if I'm really like saying this properly, but there is a side of me that, Johnny, like we've been talking about over the past week, all this AI stuff, all this quantum computing stuff. I almost wonder if we are at the point where it's beyond it's beyond the point of no return, and I don't know about that.
Well, I mean, Jim, I want to stay with the potential optimistic view that's in my opinion is inspired by stuff like this, because I'll go back to the climate change narrative, and it's like constantly we're operating in this worldview where like the limited resources, and we have to figure out how to best allocate resources. And I know that's a cornerstone of capitalism, but it always seems like, well, if we just power our society by wind and solar, and we just like make sure that the rich aren't taking too much stuff, then we can eke out a sustainable living for the next 100 years or something like that. But then I like look over and I see this, and I see these people talking about, yeah, we should be interplanetary, we should be setting up colonies on the moon, we should be setting up colonies on Mars. It just makes me feel like the human potential is so much greater than what like the average climate change alarmist person wants to pretend it is. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the title of this podcast, or the is Progressives versus Progress, and I think it came from a conversation we had at lunch the other day, in how the reason I was so inspired by this amazing achievement by SpaceX and Elon Musk is that it stands in such stark contrast to the outlook of the world from your average progressive. Your average quote unquote progressive is a climate doomer, if not a full-blown climate cultist. They look at the world as a single pie that is getting increasingly smaller, it seems, and unable to grow, and that it's a jealous grab for whatever I can get, instead of the idea of just making more pies or make a bigger pie and make more prosperity for everyone. It's a mentality. It's a mentality that the left has embraced for quite a long time, since my youth, even. This idea that it comes from the idea that capitalism is broken because it's not equitable. And so a progressive would rather have everyone equal in misery than to have anybody prospering more than they are, as a personal view. And it's a philosophy of jealousy and envy and of doom and gloom. Now, I'm not saying that you are that, Chris. I do get what you're saying, but we're going to play some clips here from the California Coastal Commission, who their meeting was just a few, I think 10 days before this historic launch. And it was, Elon Musk launches rockets from several locations. One of them is from an Air Force base in California, as well as down there in Texas and in Florida as well. He's basically the entirety of the American space program. But a leftist would fret, and somebody was joking about it, fretting in the chat about wow, what about the carbon footprint of all these rocket launches? This is going to if we all have to get into smaller cars and we have to have heat pumps and all these other things in order to save the planet. Think of the carbon footprint of just that one launch compared to what the average Americans is. But the thing that really defines, I think, and drives Elon Musk is his just boundless optimism for what he can do, and he doesn't. I don't think he thinks of it selfishly either. He's thinking about the advancement of mankind, as you said, Donnie. He's thinking about making the human species interplanetary, as that's the only way we should be. Just as the early humans came out of caves and then built civilization, he wants to advance civilization into the next step, and this launch gets us toward it. But it's that attitude from a progressive, and they also hate Elon Musk because he is not in their tribe. He is not a progressive in that way. He's openly supporting Donald Trump. He openly supports capitalism, and so that's a real problem. And the problem for the rest of us in society is that it's those people with that mindset that are most in control of all the levers of power in society and government in this country. And hopefully we're going to start turning that over sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I actually saw an article. If you cared about the greenhouse gas emissions, I saw this article. It was in the BBC. I didn't put it in the show notes. I just saw it last night when I was prepping for this. But it was talking about how a rocket that kicks 700 times harder than a passenger jet is bound to have some impact on the environment. And it talks about the FAA says that it would emit a total of 97,000 tons of CO2. Or I'd have to look at this a little bit closer, but it was suggesting that, okay, here, Starship emits as much greenhouse gases as 846 cars would emit over the course of a year. So it's definitely spraying out some CO2 when it's going up into space like that. But again, that's if you care about those sorts of things. But so yeah, so
well, Danny, can I ask you a quick question? Do you see any potential downsides to this?
Any potential downsides? Well, I mean, like, I think Jim talked about this as being a private thing as opposed to NASA. I do know that SpaceX gets like various government money for various different things, either through like their Starlink program or some of the other projects that they have. Like I mentioned, they're like going to be teaming up with NASA for the Artemis thing. So there is plenty of public money going into it. But beyond that, I don't know. I don't know if you're fishing for something or
no. I was literally just curious.
No, yeah, I think that mostly the big story here is those people at the end of that one clip cheering. All of their time and effort towards this revolutionary type of innovation paying off. What Elon Musk thought might not be possible, 13 years ago, we just saw it. We just witnessed it, and it's a miraculous thing. I look at it in the same way that people probably thought when we landed on the moon for the first time, in the late 60s. So that's how I look at it. Future problems, some of the stuff that you outlined, we could deal with that in 100 years when it becomes an issue. But I look at it as just like this huge accomplishment, and I think about how Elon and SpaceX, they're riding high on this recent achievement of Starship, and you would think that the government would be celebrating this success and encouraging this sort of innovation and forward thinking. Well, you would be wrong. So recently, SpaceX, through the U.S. Space Force, requested to increase the number of SpaceX rocket launches on the coast of California from 36 to 50 per year to facilitate various SpaceX activities. And the California State Commission rejected this request. And the commission cited several reasons for their rejection, including concerns over disruptive sonic booms and the desire to keep a closer eye on how the operations will affect the state's wildlife. So, according to the New York Times, the sonic booms have been startling residents in Southern California, whose homes have shaken by powerful, confusing jolts. The LA Times reported, and several environmental groups submitted letters urging the commission to take more time to study the impact on wildlife ahead of this week's meeting. So I know that most of your people's eyes are already rolling. Mine are too. But this wasn't the worst of it. The worst reasons cited to reject SpaceX's request was related to Elon Musk specifically. So we have a couple of videos of some of the statements made by some of the members of the California Coastal Commission that, to me, show that this decision was not made to save people from the occasional loud noise or the theoretical disruption to local wildlife. No, it shows me that this decision was entirely politically motivated. So the first clip that we have here is from Commissioner Gretchen Newsom, no relation to Gavin Newsom, in case anybody was wondering. I'm going to try to contain myself because I saw this clip yesterday and it triggered me. So let's go ahead and play good old Gretchen Newsom.
Elon Musk has enjoyed substantial subsidies from California, amounting to over $3.2 billion, while threatening to relocate his operations, including his headquarters, from California to Texas, citing his bigoted beliefs against California's safeguards and protections of our transgender community. This behavior raises concerns about the motivations behind his request for government support. And here today we have the U.S. Department of the Air Force and U.S. Space Force presenting permitting requests on behalf of SpaceX to the profitable benefit of SpaceX and its billionaire CEO. Right now, Elon Musk is hopping about the country, spewing and tweeting political falsehoods and attacking FEMA while claiming his desire to help the hurricane victims with free Starlink access to the internet. But this claim in itself is to the public benefit is a falsehood, because one must first purchase the Starlink startup kit for several $100s and then face a monthly fee of $120 after 30 days of free internet, a sick ploy to gain customers that are facing tremendous burden and dire straits. They're hurricane victims.
Oh, so I'm afraid I'm going to get heated here. I mean, is this not a character directly from Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged? I mean, someone who would burn scientific and societal progress on the altar of some nebulous, ever-changing idea of the greater good. And the clip literally makes me feel sick to my stomach. Oh, Elon Musk objects to our politically religious beliefs about transitioning children without their parents' consent. Therefore, we're going to use the state to stop SpaceX and their plans. Like, this is just disgusting to me. But Chris, I don't know. What is your reaction to that clip there?
I completely agree with you. It's extremely petty politics, and that's pretty much what I expect out of a low-level California bureaucrat, like Miss Newsom there. However, I do believe in federalism, and if California wants to commit economic suicide and kick Tesla and SpaceX out of its realm, and that's going to benefit Texas and other states, I'm totally okay with that, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not denying their right to do it, but I could also find it just abhorrent
Absolutely.
they would use those justifications. Like, even if it was just limited to oh yeah, this is hurting the desert tortoise or something like that. That would be one thing.
But Donnie, you know what? Throughout history, communist authoritarian regimes have through their petty political ways run off the most talented, smartest people. We saw that in Nazi Germany. We saw that in the Soviet Union. We saw that all across Eastern Europe. So this is par for the course. When you set up a governing style that is about retribution and based on just nothing but pure politics, you're going to run the talented, prosperous people to other places. The greatest thing about the United States is we have 50 laboratories of democracy, the 50 states. So California has decided to go in the extreme left direction in recent years, and they're paying the price for it. They're losing population. They're losing their most productive people. And the same thing is occurring here in Illinois, in other places. The beneficiaries of that are states like Texas, Florida, Tennessee, who are doing the opposite. So, I mean, I think that this is somewhat cyclical. I don't think that California is going to be in this governing style for forever. I really hope not. But this has happened throughout our country's history, where states make big mistakes and they chase away the corporations and the people who are the most productive. And usually, not always, but usually, they learn from their mistakes and then they go in a different direction. I don't know if that's going to happen in California. I think we might be starting to see just a very teeny bit of that in some of these very far left states, how they are actually cleaning up their homeless encampments and that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, this is a really stupid political move by California, and they will pay the price for it because Elon Musk has already taken his business out of California and relocated it to Texas, and looks like he's going to be doing that, in full very soon.
Jim, can you pull up that Gretchen video one more time? Because I feel like we could seriously do an entire hour just breaking down this video. So I'm going to play just a little bit of this because there are certain things that it almost just washes over you, and just the stupidity that if you don't slow down and take the little bits piece by piece, you're going to kind of miss it. But so let me just play a little bit more of
Elon
this.
Musk has enjoyed substantial subsidies from California, amounting to over $3.2 billion, while threatening to relocate his operations, including his headquarters, from California to Texas.
Okay, so right there. So first off, $3.2 billion, of government subsidies. That was actually one of the big reasons why I was not an Elon Musk fan for a long time. I'm still not like a fanboy or anything like that, but his just like desire to just like suck as much government subsidies from one way or another, that's always kind of off-putting. But the way that she says that and then says, oh, you take all this money from us and then he's going to threaten to move to Texas as if he owes you anything.
Right.
He owes you nothing. There's no like societal contract that because he like took some government money that he owes you anything. So bug off on that one. Here, let's keep.
Wait, just let me. I mean, Elon Musk did not take that money from the state of California at gunpoint. You gave it to him. There's a huge moral difference in that. And I just want to point out before you play a little bit more of this, and we could do an entire show just breaking this down and stopping this one video every 7 seconds at most.
Right.
I just love the way she's dressed. She even looks like a commissar, for crying out loud. She looks like the worst apparatchik that will visit your house and to scold you. She is the world's most horrifying home association president coming to your house to tell you that you're not allowed to have. You have 3 too many pumpkins in front of your house for Thanksgiving for Halloween, right? I mean, look at that shirt, for crying out loud.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than a bureaucrat with power that wants to abuse it.
That's right. And so there's nothing worse than a little bureaucrat with a little bit of power, and then they explode it into the ether. And just one last point to make: this is basically the California Coastal Commission doesn't need to give permission ultimately for Elon Musk to launch his rockets. The Defense Department, the Pentagon, can override that and let it go, which I'm sure they probably will, because without Elon Musk continuing to practice and perform rocket launches, we don't have a space program, and we need a space program. All right.
Right. You know what? I think you have more clips here, so I don't want to get bogged down in just this Gretchen Newsom one. But I see that there's a handful there. So Jim, I don't know, maybe you want to tee one up and play it. What do you got?
Yeah. So actually, I got. I forgot to load one, and I'll load it while we're playing this one. But this is another woman on this commission, very small-minded, and again pointing out to how they're hassling Elon Musk and trying to get in his way, not because of any legitimate reason, but because they don't like his politics.
But here we're dealing with a company that is the head of which has aggressively injected himself into the presidential race and made it clear what his point of view is. My understanding was that they would be here today on Zoom. I am very concerned that even after meeting with me, expressing my feelings.
Chair.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. They did participate on Zoom today.
Oops.
It's not the other companies. This is about SpaceX increasing their launches, not the other companies increasing their launches. So.
Yeah. So it's about Elon Musk, and we don't like his politics. And I love the idea. It's like, she's so indignant. These people are so small and so insignificant, and look how much they enjoy exerting the power that they think they have to stop things. It's mind blowing.
I cannot help if anyone watching this has read Atlas Shrugged, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's these small bureaucratic people, as you described them, pulling down these like titans of industry. Like that's what that like whole book is about. And this is like the most vivid real life example of that I think I have ever seen in my life. And that's why I wanted to dedicate so much of the show to this. On one hand, we're watching this like marvel of modern technology and engineering feats that, again, thought maybe impossible just a decade ago. And then now these people that you've never even heard of on some coastal commission in California that is doing their darndest to squash it out of some petty hatred, some petty political hatred of the guy that is the head of it. It's just unbelievable.
But the good news is that they're going to be overridden. So who cares what they say? I mean, if this was, President Biden going up there and saying we were going to outlaw all SpaceX launches in the United States of America, I'd be like, whoa, that's really bad.
Give it a year.
This is just a bunch of California, far left, progressive people who are, trying to score political points. And I think that they're very upset. I think the timing of this is very important. They're very upset that Kamala Harris seems to be losing the president. Do you guys not think that that's
no,
kind of
I
part
think
of
you're
this?
right. I
And
think you're right. I just
Elon
find it
Musk
funny.
literally being parked in Pennsylvania promoting Donald Trump.
Absolutely.
If Elon Musk had not gone to that Pennsylvania rally and was really, just staying on the bench on this one, I doubt that they would be doing this. They're doing this because he has emphatically endorsed Donald Trump, and that's what this is about, I think, personally.
Oh, I think you're right. I think that's part of that that political pettiness that they're trying to throw in his face. But Jim, let's do one more clip. I know you got two there. Pick the best one.
I'll pick the best one. I titled it in the background Soy Boy. So here we go, Soy Boy.
Are talking about SpaceX in this, and I will say, and I just want to put it out there, as a person in this process, in as was mentioned earlier today, we're an appointed body. There's the politics and policy and science. They mix in these spaces. It's real. This company is owned by the richest person in the world with direct control over what could be the most extensive global communication system on the planet. And just last week, that person was speaking about political retribution on a national stage, and it was very glib, but yet he was standing next to a candidate that openly promotes and is working to normalize that language, and we have to push back against that.
Yeah, it's so, I mean, like, this is what we're up against. I mean, these people are seriously, they're sick. I mean, we've talked about Trump derangement syndrome. I think it's mutated. I used to joke that if Trump were to discover the cure for cancer, that people would reject it out of spite for Donald Trump. But it's not even a joke anymore. Elon Musk, through SpaceX and Tesla and some of his other business ventures, are potentially revolutionizing the world. Tesla had an event just late last week where they unveiled their robo-taxis and their humanoid robot Optimus to kind of show the latest developments of those things. So he's potentially revolutionizing automation through their Optimus robots, potentially revolutionizing transportation through the robo-taxis, potentially revolutionizing space travel with Starship. But let's downplay and ignore all of this because he's got conservative perspectives on free speech and a couple of other things. It's just, I can't take it. It's really hard for me to sit here and listen to these people explain why they're gonna try to put the locks on Elon Musk and SpaceX. Go ahead.
I mean, I know we're eager to get to the Kamala Harris interview yesterday. I know Chris is, but I just want to highlight why I think this is important, and it's the abuse of power by even these petty little bureaucrats. It is not legal to discriminate against Elon Musk just because of his political views. It's not. It goes beyond just improper. Anybody in a position of power they are representative of the people, and they're supposed to exercise their power without favor or disfavor based on politics or any other thing. Everything should be judged on its merits. And we are at a point now in society where radical leftists feel entirely comfortable admitting in a public setting that they are trying to squelch somebody's business. In this case, one of the most important businesses going in America right now, for petty political reasons. They are so comfortable saying it. Gretchen is spitting it out in her commissar shirt, and they think this is totally fine. And this is indicative of what's happening all over our government and has been happening over our government, frankly, since Donald Trump was elected in 2016. The government was weaponized against him before he even took the oath of office, and the government is still being weaponized against anybody who does not toe the liberal line, from government agencies as small and irrelevant as this one to our even Department of Defense or Department of Justice in this country. That's what I think. That's why I think it was important to mention this, even though the Pentagon is going to override it. I would be absolutely certain of that. In a lot of cases, that wouldn't happen. That these petty bureaucrats will punish their political enemies, and they will use every lever they have of power to do so.
Yep.
I would just add that they're going to fail, and that's a good thing. So
yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, you said if Biden were doing this, that would be another thing. And I honestly feel that give it some time, and they'll put the brakes on the entire space program just simply because of the CO2 emissions. We're burning our planet up. We can't waste that. Remember all of the hatred that was thrown at you mentioned the Blue Origin. Was that Bezos? That was Bezos's thing.
Yeah.
Bezos, Elon Musk, and Richard Branson. They all had like a little space thing all within like a week. And the amount of like hatred towards them, these billionaires playing with their toys or whatever, like that's the mindset that leads to like a societal degradation instead of moving forward and expanding the horizons and trying to figure out where human potential can grow to. No, it's trying to stifle all of that in the name of equality and climate change. Those are like the two giant driving factors of societal degradation. But yes, I could talk about this for a long time, but considering we're at 45 minutes, we should move on to good old Kamala Harris. So Kamala Harris, was it last week that we did the episode based on Kamala Harris's campaign is getting desperate? Was that last week?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. So we're kind of continuing on with that theme. I think that the last 7 days have done nothing but added to that little narrative there. And one of the things that is kind of a data point on that trend line is the idea that Kamala Harris agreed to do an interview with Bret Baier of Fox News. So this is kind of particularly surprising because generally speaking, when we have a Democrat candidate that's not just hiding out in his basement during the campaign season, they're generally not taking interviews that are potentially antagonistic, not friendly. Seeing Kamala Harris go on The View is one thing. Going on Fox News to talk with Bret Baier is another thing. So, Chris, I'm going to let you kind of set this up. This was planned to be a half-hour long interview. It was recorded, but it was presented unedited live, right? Take it from there. What did we observe yesterday?
We observed Kamala Harris not being able to answer many of the questions that many Americans have been wondering over the past couple months. We saw her obfuscate. We saw her just completely refuse to answer very straightforward questions. I think that the Fox interview was enlightening because it shows that she really is not prepared to be the president of the United States. It also shows me that when she is faced with any sort of combative interview or anyone who does not agree with her on main points, she gets frustrated, she gets angry, and she almost lashes out. I think that she was obviously not expecting Bret Baier to push as much as he did, and I'm glad that he did push back a lot. I'm glad that he asked follow-up question after follow-up question. Good for him for doing that, trying to really tie her down and see where she actually stands on many of the positions that she's been waffling on over the past couple months. I think this is part of her larger campaign problem. So, a couple of weeks ago, the campaign announced, well, she's going to go on and do this big media tour. The media tour started with, like you said, The View and a couple of podcasts. She was on Charlamagne the God's radio show. She was on Howard Stern as well. At those interviews, it was more of the same. It was softball question after softball question, basically just agreeing with everything that she had done. And then she walked into, the belly of the beast. And she walked into Fox News. This was her first Fox News interview, and I think it was terrible for her. And I think that it also reeked of desperation because she's, I think, well understands that things are not looking good for her in the key swing states, and she has to try to appeal to some of these independents or these Liz Cheney type Republicans. And I think that it didn't work. I think that she, did not impress them at all. And I think that, she came away from it and people are now thinking exactly what they thought. This woman, was handed this nomination. She does not have a plan in place. She, does not, she's unwilling to call out, the mistakes that she's made over the past 3.5 years in the Biden administration. And she just constantly points fingers and blames Donald Trump for everything. And people are just sick and tired of it. This election, that's just going to be happening very soon, is about results. It's not about personality. It's not about, trying to say he's, a terrible, would-be dictator. That's not gonna work. The people really are concerned about, the big three as I've been describing them: immigration, crime, and the economy. And on all three of those things, Kamala Harris is a failure. And just today, we learned that the FBI have been actually gumming up the numbers, and the rate is actually way up under Biden Harris administration. So not only is it the Bureau of Labor Statistics, saying 800,000 jobs were created that were never created. Now you've got the FBI falsely reporting on crime data. So I think that people are losing confidence in the mainstream media and these major institutions, and that's a very concerning development. And, I like Jim said earlier, I think this really does go back to 2016, 2015, when Donald Trump emerged on the political scene, and they just, went bonkers and think we have to do anything possible to prevent this man from winning again. Even though we know that his, 4-year term was nothing near like they said it was going to be, and nothing near like what Kamala said was going to happen in that interview, with camps being set up for people and political retribution, and Adam Schiff better watch out, and Nancy Pelosi is going to be on his enemies list. That is just not true. Donald Trump could have gone after his political opponents. He chose not to. Actually, the total opposite has occurred since the Biden-Harris administration. They have gone after their political opponents, whether it's Steve Bannon, whether it's Peter Navarro, or whether it's Donald Trump himself. They have actually put these people in jail. So I'm just getting really sick and tired of this rhetoric that they're spouting, saying, oh, Donald Trump, if he gets in there, we're going to see concentration camps and Nazism and all this stuff. No, that's not true. We're actually going to see really common sense policies that the American people really need right now, especially in terms of immigration, crime, and the economy and the cost of living. That's what people care about. That's what this election is about. And Kamala Harris cannot answer those questions.
Right. Yeah. And I feel like, we could, even if it was like a good interview, we can go through and find the clips where she looks particularly bad. But I don't think there was any part of this interview that went particularly well. So what we have is a smattering of clips. I don't know if we'll get through all of them, but the first one, this was the first part of the interview that I saw, and it was, and this is kind of related to the idea that she's essentially the incumbent candidate, right? But she's trying to present herself as this agent of change. And there's this reality that, like, you can't have both. There was an embarrassing clip we didn't have prepared for this of Tim Walz recently talking about, we can't take 4 more years of this. It's like, you guys have been in charge for the last 4 years. But so this gets brought up by Bret Baier, this idea that an overwhelming majority of Americans think that we're heading in the wrong direction as a country. And so, yeah, let's play this clip and see Kamala Harris's response to it.
People are exhausted. 70% of people tell the country is on the wrong track. They say the country is on the wrong track. If it's on the wrong track, that track follows 3.5 years of you being vice president and President Biden being president. That is what they're saying, 79% of them. Why are they saying that? If you're turning the page, you've been in office for 3.5 years.
And Donald Trump has been running for office.
What does that mean?
What does that mean? Wait, is there more to that clip? Because there was
that was the end of that clip I have for you.
So she repeats that like 2 or 3 times or whatever, and then he's like, "Yeah, but you've been in office." And then she says, "Well, yeah, but he's been running, and you know what I mean. You know exactly what I mean." And Bret Baier says, I don't know what you mean. What are you talking about? So Jim, I mean, that is like that's got to be like the worst fumble. That's the worst fumble of the whole thing, I think. Maybe some of the clips are worse, but that to me is like Chris was saying, like the big points that are in voters' minds is they're thinking like these last 3.5 years with inflation and all of that like hasn't been great. What's your response to that, Kamala Harris? Well, Donald Trump's been running for president. It's like, that's not even an answer. What do you think?
It isn't even an answer. And to be honest, I didn't see the clips until later because I don't have Fox News. I don't have cable at all. But I was looking at a few clips on my phone on X, and I thought, oh my God, she did terrible. She did terrible. Everybody's saying that she just did terrible, and the clips showed that. And then I watched the whole thing actually on YouTube, and I thought, you know what? She didn't do as badly as I thought she did. And then I watched it again, and I probably watched it 3 times. She got there 17 minutes late, so they didn't get as many questions in as they wanted. That was obviously on purpose. The intent, what Kamala Harris was trying to do was to get there late, because Brett Baer had promised, like, we'll record 30 minutes, and then he probably figured from 5 o'clock to 5:30 we'll record this interview, and then that gives my team half an hour to get it ready and to air right at 6 o'clock on Fox News. She knew that was the plan, so she shows up 17 minutes late. And her intent was to filibuster through all these questions.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, and since Brett Baer had very limited amount of time, he would talk over her and wouldn't let her get away with it, and tried to nail her down on some very basic questions. Like, I don't know, you had a position on, like, for instance, like in 2019, you had a position that all transgender surgeries to transition should be paid for by the taxpayers for anybody in federal prison system. So murderers and all those people, if they feel like they want to transition, the taxpayers have to pay for that. That was a position that he played the clip of her saying so in 2019, and he asked her a very logical question: do you still have that position today? The left, considers that an attack question or a gotcha question. No, it's just asking what actually the American people would like to know. You've had these kind of positions that are out of the mainstream just a few years ago. Do you still hold those positions? She refused to answer them. And in fact, I think one of her answers was, Brett, that was 5 years ago. Like,
yeah.
Okay, fine. Yeah, 5 years ago, it's not that long ago. Do you still believe that this should be policy? And she said, I will follow the law, because apparently it's law to do this. You'll have the power as president to make those policies. Do you still support it? She refused to answer.
The idea that, like, I'm going to follow the law. It's like, you're also running to be part of a government wing that controls what the laws are, So it's some of those answers that you're talking about are actually in this immigration clip. Do you want to play that one, and then you can elaborate further?
Yeah, no, we'll play the immigration clip. But it's like, what I found funny was that, great, actually, because this was the first. It was hardly super challenging, but it was the first any challenge to any of her policies, any interview she's ever given. J.D. Vance does this stuff daily, and he just slays on the Sunday shows all the time. He gets nothing but, hostile questions, and he has no problem with it. She has a big problem with it, and her answers are pretty terrible. So here we go with the immigration stuff.
Voters tell pollsters all over the country and here in Pennsylvania that immigration is one of the key issues that they're looking at this election, and specifically the influx of illegal immigrants from more than 150 countries. How many illegal immigrants would you estimate your administration has released into the country over the last 3.5 years?
Well, I'm glad you raised the issue of immigration, because I agree with you. It is a topic of discussion that people want to rightly have. And you know what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, but a number. Do you think it's 1 million, 3 million?
Brett, let's just get to the point. Okay, the point is that we have a broken immigration system that needs to be repaired.
So your Homeland Security Secretary said that 85% of apprehensions.
I'm not finished. We have
it's
an
a rough
immigration
estimate of 6 million people have been released into the country. And let me just finish. I'll get to the question, I promise you.
I was beginning to answer.
And when you came into office, your administration immediately reversed a number of Trump border policies. Most significantly, the policy that required illegal immigrants to be detained through deportation, either in the U.S. or in Mexico. And you switched that policy. They were released from custody awaiting trial. So instead, included in those were a large number of single men, adult men, who went on to commit heinous crimes. So, looking back, do you regret the decision to terminate Remain in Mexico at the beginning of your administration?
At the beginning of our administration, within practically hours of taking the oath.
Here's the filibuster.
The first bill that we offered Congress, before we worked on infrastructure, before the Inflation Reduction Act, before the Chips and Science Act, before the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, The first bill, practically within hours of taking the oath, was a bill to fix our immigration system.
Yes, ma'am. It was called
And-
the U.S. Citizenship
Get on with
Act
it.
of
Let's go.
2021. It was essentially a
but
pathway to
may I
citizenship for
please
the...
finish?
Yes,
May
ma'am.
I finish responding,
But
please?
here- but this-
you have to let me finish,
You had the
please.
White House and the House and the Senate,
I'm
and they
in the
didn't
middle
bring up
of
that bill.
responding to the point you're raising,
Okay.
and I'd like to finish.
Wow.
She said nothing. She said zero. Chris, I mean, seriously, like, maybe some people are saying like, well, it wasn't a train wreck, but it's not doing her any favors. I mean, I'm watching some of these clips, and they're just like, they're flying as good as a brick with a anchor tied to it. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I just want to like really key in on that point because this has been getting a lot of attention since she entered the race, and she keeps saying that Donald Trump torpedoed this border bill, but that border bill didn't wasn't even introduced into Congress until 2023. So for the first 2 years of her administration, like Brett Baer said, the Democrats had control of the House and the Senate. They did absolutely nothing on the border except undo all of Donald Trump's executive orders that were in place designed to keep these people from entering the United States, remain in Mexico, and those other kind of things. So she just completely ignores that and just refuses to even address that point, and just tries to point fingers and blame Trump because he did not agree with this supposedly bipartisan bill in 2023 that was just not even, not a good bill at all, would not have solved the problem at all. And we know why. Because they wanted to let in tens of millions of people into this country because they want to change the demography of this country so that they can win more political elections. I mean, it's very simple. And, that's what this is about. The American people see that's happening. I think that they overestimated on this one, because now we're seeing that these cities across the country, not just border cities, but cities all over the place, including Chicago, New York City, all over, they're being overrun with, illegal immigrants who are causing all sorts of problems for their public services, for education, just all over the place, not to mention crime, obviously. And I think the American people are really fed up with that. And they're really fed up with that. She will not even say, hey, you know what, we made a mistake. If I could go back, I would redo it this way. I wouldn't do that, and the other thing. She just keeps just saying, no, actually, you're wrong, Brett. Everything's great. Everything's fine. And don't worry about how many people have entered this country. It doesn't matter. And the American people, I just think, are sick and tired. They will not buy that.
Right. Yeah. Here's another clip, and this one, I don't know if it caught her off guard because it's asking about Joe Biden, and Joe Biden is in most people's minds not even president anymore. He's just faded off into the sunset, almost literally. But so this one almost caught her off guard. But I think that this question is more kind of almost trying to gauge her judgment on things. So let's go ahead and play this clip.
He's
He is
unstable. He is unstable, Brett.
He's not well. You say he's mentally not stable?
He's not
talking about
Let me
stable,
ask you this.
and-
You
and
told
we
many
should all be
interviewers
concerned.
that Joe Biden was on his game, that ran around circles on his staff. When did you first notice that President Biden's mental faculties appeared diminished?
Joe Biden, I have watched from the Oval Office to the Situation Room, and he has the judgment and the experience to do exactly what he has done in making very important decisions on behalf of the American people.
There were no concerns raised?
Brett, Joe Biden is not on the ballot.
I understand.
And
but
Donald Trump
But
is.
you talked about it.
And Donald Trump
After George Clooney said within a few minutes of talking to President Biden at a fundraiser that he thought this was not the same Joe Biden that we saw on the debate stage.
Donald Trump is on the ballot.
I understand. You met with him at least once a week for 3.5 years. You didn't have any concerns?
I think the American people have a concern about Donald Trump, which is why the people who know him best, including leaders of our national security community, have all spoken out. Even people who worked for him in the Oval Office, worked with him in the Situation Room, and have said he is unfit and dangerous and should never be president of the United States again, including his former vice president, which is why the job was open for him to choose another running mate. So that is a fact. That is a fact.
I can think of another job that was recently made open. That would be the Democratic candidate for president of the United States. I mean, what I love about this question and the way it's set up is that Brett Baer set up a trap and she just walked right into it. Because he first started talking about Trump. It's like, you say Trump is unstable, that he's mentally unfit, that he's losing it, that he's too old and all that stuff. And she was so eager to get in there. And he's like, but what about Biden? You know, and it was a very simple
he's sharp as
question.
a tack, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's actually one of the biggest political scandals that's never reported on. It's that the entire administration, including Kamala Harris, covered up the fact that the president of the United States has brains made of tapioca and has for quite a while. And it's a very fair question that a lot of Americans actually are wondering about. When did you first notice that Joe Biden was not fit to be president of the United States because he is going senile and he just doesn't have the mental capabilities to run an ice cream stand, let alone be president? And she doesn't want to answer that question because the answer to that question is, we knew it a long time ago, but she can't say that. And so kudos to Brett Baer for bringing that up, and her attempt to deflect that back to Trump did not come off very well, and that's not gonna play very well.
Jim, we got one more clip that you talked me into playing here. I wasn't sure of the context of this one, so I wasn't too keen on playing it. But why don't you set it up and hit play, and then comment on it?
All right.
And you and I both know that he has talked about turning the American military on the American people. He has talked about going after people who are engaged in peaceful protest. He has talked about locking people up because they disagree with him. This is a democracy. And in a democracy, the President of the United States, in the United States of America, should be willing to be able to handle criticism without saying he'd lock people up for doing it. And this is what is at stake, which is why you have someone like the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff saying what Mark Milley has said about Donald Trump being a threat to the United States of America.
That triggered me. So I just have to say this idea, and they've been peddling this, and so much for the fact that Donald Trump has had 2, maybe 3 assassination attempts and got shot in the face, in the ear. That's part of your face. At a rally, they're still cranking up the threat to democracy language here. Joe Biden himself even said at a separate appearance in Philadelphia that he can't wait to see Donald Trump, sentenced and put behind bars, which is amazing. So, this kind of triggered me because this is typical leftist projection. Donald Trump is not talking about sicking the military upon the American citizens and people who disagree with him. That is calumny. That is a lie. That is actually a dangerous lie. Not, of the kind they always talk about, because everything on the left is projection. He's talking about if we see a repeat of the riots of the Summer of Love in 2020, that he is going to try harder to get the National Guard out there to restore order. That's what he's talking about. He's not talking about ordering the military to march through the streets and round up his political opponents. That is what the Democrats say is going to happen, and it is extremely dangerous to try to convince, frankly, unhinged supporters of your candidate and your party to think that that is what he is talking about, and to stand there and say that he wants to arrest people who disagree with him. When we have, 1,000, your own Department of Justice brags about the 1,500 people they have rounded up and thrown in jail for January 6th. The vast majority of them actually peacefully protesting and invited into the Capitol, not breaking down barriers, but walking into the Capitol. Grandmothers were taking selfies with them, walking between the ropes in the Capitol Rotunda. Those people were arrested and put in jail because they are your political opponents. And the reason you did that is to silence any opposition to your regime. That is exactly what is going on here. And so for her to be saying on this, and she says it on the stump, and Obama says it on the stump in her stead, all of her surrogates do, that Donald Trump is going to use the military and sick them upon his political opponents in America, it's a lie. It's an actual dangerous lie. And for her, and if Brett Baer had a little bit more time, he may have been able to challenge her on that. That's my only disappointment.
Chris, we played a bunch of clips here. Any comments on that clip in particular, or anything else in regards to the Brett Baier interview?
Yeah, so after the first assassination attempt, I remember that we were talking about whether or not the mainstream media had some sort of role in that. And back then, I took the stance of no, they really didn't have a role, because first, we didn't have any evidence that this guy was consuming mass media and all that kind of stuff. But I've kind of changed my mind on that. First of all, we've seen another assassination attempt since then, which is just insane. And I do think that the rhetoric has just gone so over the top. I was watching some MSNBC this morning, getting ready for work, and Mika and Joe were just I've never seen them like this. I mean, they are like they made what Kamala said there look actually like pretty normal, because they are saying that if Donald Trump comes into the Oval Office on January 20th, 2025, that we are going to see concentration camps set up, and that all of his political opponents will be thrown into concentration camps. That is just so like over the top, and like you just unfair and not true. And then it makes me wonder, so why are they saying that? I am beginning to think that they know that the writing's on the wall and that Trump is going to win, and that they are preparing for that, and that they are preparing for almost all-out war, against a second Trump term. And I go back to the to the early days of the first Trump term. I was down in South Carolina back then. I was actually still teaching, and I remember just some of the protests that took place when Trump did his quote unquote Muslim ban, when he actually just said, hey, these couple of countries here in the Middle East, they've got a lot of terrorists going on there. Let's just maybe stop migration for them for a little bit. And it was just so over the top. And it was the mainstream media that was leading the charge on that, and so many other issues, saying that Donald Trump literally wants to ban all Muslims from this country. It's like, no, he never said that. Like, what are you talking about? So I'm getting nervous that the rhetoric that they're going to be espousing in a couple of months is going to make that look like child's play, and that we're going to just see some potentially very dangerous developments from that. And I think a lot of people, are going to come out of the woodwork and think, well, this guy is a threat to democracy. This guy is, a dictator. He's a fascist. He's going to throw people in, in concentration camps. Better do something about it. So, it's really sad, pathetic, scary that the mainstream media are just going so far to try to scare, the socks off the American people. If someone who comes back into office, who we saw, govern for 4 years and did a very good job, and none of the stuff that they're saying happened, not even close to it, like nothing, not even near it. So they've got to just stop with this. They've got to stop with the Hitler comparisons, the Nazi comparisons. They are, I think, driving people over the edge. And, I'm fearful that, I think Trump's going to win, but then I'm fearful what's going to happen for the next 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Like what's going to happen. I remember Maxine Waters saying, hey, if you see any Trump supporters, at a gas station, go and do something, or, Trump people, in the administration getting thrown out of restaurants and stuff like that. I think that's just going to be the, just look like nothing compared to what happens from 2025 to 2029. If and when I hope Donald Trump wins.
Right. And I will say that if Donald Trump becomes president and starts putting all of his political opponents in concentration camps, I will drop my support. You have my word on that, people on the left.
Yeah.
So yeah, so this all just kind of goes, and even Chris's depiction of kind of the media's treatment of all of this stuff just highlights this idea of just this desperation that's going on in the Kamala Harris campaign. I think we referenced this last time. We don't have to go into it again, but the polls of the swing states are looking increasingly favorable to Donald Trump. Some of these betting odds websites are looking particularly favorable for Donald Trump. It's leading the Kamala Harris campaign to do things that they wouldn't normally do to try to get some, extra momentum here. Going on the Brett Baier interview on Fox News, that was one of them. There was also news that broke over the last several days. Donald Trump was on some podcast, and they were asking him, when are you going to be on the Joe Rogan podcast, the most viewed podcast in the world? And he's like, "Oh, I think I am doing that one. Yeah, I am doing that one." So everyone's like, "Wait, what?" There hasn't been any official announcement, but if Donald Trump goes on the Joe Rogan podcast, it's going to break the internet. Within like 2 hours of that news kind of circling on X or social media, the Harris campaign floated out something being like, "Oh yeah, we're actually looking to go on Joe Rogan too." It's just like, first off, nobody believes you. Secondly, like that would be terrible for your campaign, surely, and certainly a move again out of desperation. So I think that for me, it feels like the writing's on the wall. It feels like what is going on with the campaign, what's going on with the media is just trying to make it seem like it's closer than it really is, because I feel like it's not going to be very close. I swear, there's some other things going around of like, the same things that we heard 4 years ago, like, oh yeah, there's going to be a lot of mail-in votes, we're going to have to wait days for them all to be counted, it's even likely that a lot of those will swing one way or the other, versus the other, I should say. And I don't think we're going to have to wait 4 days. I feel like this is going to be wrapped up on election night. But Jim, what do you think? Am I reading too much into this desperation of the left?
Stop giving me hope and and calming my fears about this election, because I still have the scars from 2020. We still know that election was not exactly on the up and up. There were let's just say I already just got this podcast demonetized and banned, although our channel is demonetized. It doesn't matter, I guess. But let's put it charitably. There were irregularities to that election. The 2020 election was the most unique one any of us have ever experienced. And we saw a huge lead in Pennsylvania and other swing states just suddenly disappear in the middle of the night. And when people were tracking the vote counts, it went from, it's just impossible that when you're opening up boxes of ballots, that 99% of them, or maybe even 100% of them, are for one candidate, not the other. It's a statistical impossibility. Yet we saw it happen in 2020. And so, supporters of Donald Trump have been saying that it has to be, the victory for Donald Trump has to be too big to rig, that it has to be overwhelming. The polls show that a lot of the swing states are tight. And historically, Donald Trump's support has been underpolled. So if the race in Pennsylvania is tied, that probably means in practical terms, at least as far as the expression of the voters of Pennsylvania, that he's probably up by a few points. And if that's the case, then yes, this is looking as optimistic as you think, Donnie. But again, I've experienced the 2020 election. I kind of, I keep replaying it in my head. And the idea that an American election for president will be settled on election night, as has happened in every other election but one in our entire lifetimes, I am not so optimistic that I think that will happen, but we'll see.
All right, Chris. I mean, I don't want to inspire complacency or anything like that. But I've been saying this. This has been my thought that I've been saying on this podcast for at least 3 weeks now, that I'm thinking Trump is taking this, walking away. Final thoughts, and then we're going to wrap up the show.
Yeah, I think the best evidence to point to that is that at this point in time, Joe Biden had a 10-point national lead. Most of the national polls show maybe Kamala winning by 1, 2, or actually tied. And in the swing states, Biden was up by more than 5 points in almost all of them. Trump in the RCP average is winning every single swing state, all 7 of them. That is a humongous difference from 2016 and 2020. I mean, so I'm confident that he's going to win. But like Jim said, we saw what happened in 2020. I stayed up that entire night watching, just my mouth on the floor, just going, I can't believe this is happening. I doubt that that's going to happen again, just because this time there's not going to be the sheer number of mail-in voting, and there's not all the pandemic, stuff happening. But yeah, there still is going to be some cheating. Of course, there's going to be cheating. And I think it's going to be, less than it was in 2020. And I think Trump's going to win. And that's what I'm sticking to.
Yeah, so I see the comment that was briefly flashed on the screen from Engineer Guy. Jim, if you could find that one, of the Tyrus on Fox News, talking about him guaranteeing that it's going to be a landslide, and that if it's not, he's going to shave his beard. I can't go that far, guys.
Come on, Donnie. Come on,
I
man.
can't go that far. I can't go that far. But obviously, this will be a topic in the weeks leading up to the election. We'll talk about it more and more on future episodes of the In the Tank podcast. I want to thank all of you for joining us for this episode. Tune in every week for a new episode of the In the Tank podcast. If you're watching this or listening to it on iTunes, leave a review for us on iTunes. That would be greatly appreciated. And you could also watch us live on Thursdays, noon Central Time on Facebook and YouTube and X and Rumble. And you can join the conversation, throw your comments and questions in the chat. Maybe we'll show your comment on the screen. Maybe we'll address your questions on the fly. And you can also support the show by going to heartland.org/inthetank and donating directly to the show. We have been demonetized by YouTube, but if you go to that URL there and donate to the show, YouTube doesn't get to take a 30% cut, so there's a big plus there. If you want to support the show but don't want to spend $1 and just spend a couple of seconds hitting that like button, sharing this content, subscribing if you haven't already, or just leaving a comment under the video, all of those things help break through those big tech algorithms that prevent content like this from being shown to more people. Jim Lakely, where can the fine people find you?
At J Lakely on X, at Heartland Inst on X, and always visit heartland.org.
Fantastic. And Chris Talgo, what do you have to pitch today?
The Heartland Institute's home website at heartland.org, of course.
Fantastic. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you next week.
Turn that off.